Hello, Healing Overflow family. It's so good to see y'all again. How y'all doing? Good to hear. All right, some of y'all said not so well, but that's okay too. That's why you're tuning in to Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy. I have a guest that I'm so excited about. I got to give y'all, my Healing Overflow, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going right in and introducing this next guest because I've been waiting to get her on, and scheduling has been rough, but we got it. We got it, family. All right. Okay. Hold on. All right. Let me do what I'm supposed to do. All right. So this is Healing Overflow with Dr. Tori's Social Work Podcast. Thank y'all for watching and listening. University of Pittsburgh, shout out to my December grads. Y'all did it. For others, listen, let's just keep on moving and your time will come. If you want to talk with me and interact, I would love that. Email me at toyaj@pitt.edu. Also, use the Crowdtrex link or use my email to send me Ask a Therapist questions. Y'all didn't play around. I said ask a therapist, and y'all was like, okay, I'm going to ask a whole lot. So I've been getting so many questions that a whole entire podcast was dedicated to Ask a Therapist. So I think that is so wonderful. There are still a ton more questions I'm going to keep answering. And guess what? You're going to keep receiving your Starbucks gift card if your question is answered on the podcast. I feel my inner Oprah coming through. All right, y'all. That's all I'm going to say. We're getting right into the guest. Today we have Coach Q. I am going to let her introduce herself a little bit, but I'm going to give you some of her bio. She is a native of Buffalo, New York, and resides in Atlanta, Georgia, where we wish we all were right now, those of us that live in Pittsburgh. So, because it's cold, Coach. There's like snowflakes here. All right. Her educational background is so interesting to me, y'all. She has a bachelor's of science in biology and psychology, a master's of public health and epidemiology, and a coaching certificate, which we got to get into. Like, what is that? But it's from an international coaching federation. That's what it's called, ICF. She has published journal articles for the National Society of Cellular Biology and Emory School of Medicine. Yeah, she's a smarty pants. And so I always look at Coach Q like science, social, worky, and wisdom came together and they had a baby, and it was Coach Q. So that's who we have on today. Please put your hands together for Coach Q.
Thank you, Dr. Toy. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today. Thank you for having me.
Oh man, it is such a pleasure. It's such a thrill to have you. You have your own podcast. We're going to talk about that, and the listeners are going to continue to listen to subscribe to yours. And it's just such an interesting podcast, and it's so fulfilling. And I want everyone to know, like, it's pouring in. Talk about pouring into your vessel and filling up and running over, y'all. Really, just continue that whole vein, right? So, I want to talk about who Coach Q is. You weren't born Coach Q, so your
Nope,
name.
for Coach Q.
Give us a little bit, like, who is Coach Q?
Yeah, so Coach Q, I'm LaQuinte Brinson. So I am a proud daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. I'm a lover, and ultimately, I'm a healer. And so that is who I am. If I had to describe myself in just a few words.
It captures you so well. And listen, those that are watching the podcast, because a lot of y'all just listen, but some of y'all watch, you're going to see me looking up. I'm looking up at my friend up there on the screen. It's a huge screen in my podcast studio. And it allows me to zoom her in. Using Podcaster. And so it's awesome. So you're going to see me looking up and talking to her. But I said, I'm going to talk to her in the sky. And she said, I don't want to be in the sky yet.
Not
So
yet. Not yet.
we're not going to put you in the sky, coach.
Yeah, hold
So
on.
talk about what is a coach? Is it a life coach? Because I've heard of life coaches. Is that what you go by? Is a life coach? And you're like, what is a coach? Is it a therapist? Just help define that
Yeah,
for everyone listening and
absolutely.
watching.
So coaching is ultimately a professional partnership that is there to aid in goals and challenges and success or failures. It's that professional partnership. What started off for me was life coaching nearly a decade ago when I was certified. I have evolved and done executive coaching. Right now, I'm working on some grief coaching certification. So it just evolves over time as I see a need. But I believe that no matter what the title is, it's all life coaching because I feel like in order for us to get to wherever we want to go, there's something in our lives that we need to address before we can progress.
Absolutely. I love the way you defined it. We've had this conversation off camera many times, and I feel like I know through and through what a coach is just from our conversations and interacting, and I love it. I have friends that have coaches. I know you have some big name folks as clients. I love the confidentiality that you have. I mean, it's just it is such a unique profession, and I'm wondering, like, how did you wander into it? Did you always know? Were you just this like little 11-year-old with all this wisdom or something? Like, how did you get into coaching?
Yeah, so no, so my background, so for psychology, as you spoke of in the beginning, psychology and biology, I kind of married the two in undergrad, which I had this hunger for the medicine side of it as well as the psychology side of it, because I know that most things that we face, even if it manifests in our body, it really starts off in our mind. And so
Mhm.
I was intrigued by the two, and I'm like, how do these go together? But I was pursuing full time, going to medical school, and then as I got into public health and epidemiology, I started to study different diseases, different groups of people, and mental health was one of the things that I tapped into. And I was like, And it kind of, as I got more intrigued by it, I just got deeper and deeper into it
Mhm.
and kind of fell in love with the neurology around it all. And from there, it was like I was doing, research and things like that, or going to speak on certain platforms of it. And then people would ask me, like, oh, can I talk to you? I want to like sit down and talk to you. I'm like, well, I'm not a therapist. I don't want to get into that. And so I started to explore other avenues because I was like, do I want to be a therapist? Do I want to be a medical physician? Who do I want to be? And I decided to get into coaching because I thought that it was very important to be able to facilitate a meaningful conversation. So many people think that, oh, let's just talk or let me just tell you what I've been through and I'm helping you. But really, it is the questions that you ask. As a coach, I don't have to give you the answers, but I have to help you discover the answers within you. And so, as I began to gain the tools of a coach, I realized that my educational background and skill sets, marry those together, and then here you go, Coach Q.
Had a baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
It came together. I think that is so masterful that you were able to say, "Oh, wait, let me grab all of these different areas and put them all together for the healing." You said, "I'm a healer for the
Absolutely.
healing of others." People come to you broken, afraid,
Absolutely.
in panics, like, "What am I gonna do in my
Mhm.
life? What am I supposed to be doing? I'm out here faking it. I don't know what the what I'm doing next. I'm putting
Absolutely.
up social media posts like this, leaning up against a Lamborghini. Meanwhile, I'm on a bus. Like, I don't really know what I'm
Yeah.
doing."
Yeah.
And you help sort their lives. You help put them together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. What
Absolutely.
you do is so important,
Thank
and I'm so glad that we have an opportunity to talk about it.
Absolutely.
I've started hearing you talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And what I notice with students, because my Healing Overflow family, y'all are students, but y'all are also people in the community. You're working, you have kids, families. I have a really mixed and broad audience. Thank y'all. That's because of y'all. And so we're speaking to them all. Imposter syndrome hits everybody. It don't care nothing about, oh, I have all these degrees. I'm so professional. I'm so smart. I have no degrees, but I have all the street knowledge. It doesn't care. It doesn't care. It comes knocking on your door. So I said we must have Coach Q on to talk about imposter syndrome because I hear so many people talk about that. let's define it for the audience if you're not quite sure. Once you define it, y'all, you're going to be like, uh-oh, that's me,
Right.
right? What's imposter syndrome, coach?
Basically, it's just this phenomenon that you're a fraud, that you
Oh,
are not all of the things that you have worked for, all of the things that you know to be true, but some way you talk yourself out of believing like, no, I'm not that, or I'm not supposed to be here, or I shouldn't be around this group of people, or I shouldn't have a seat at the table. It is really just the mental idea around being something that you are truly are, but you believe that you're not.
mm.
Mhm.
So okay, listen, I think sometimes people mix up imposter syndrome for you're not that person and you're faking like you're that person. No, that's not what you just said. You
Mhm.
are. You are
Right.
smart. You are supposed to be at the table because you're sitting at the table. So you're
Exactly.
all those things, but you feel like you're not. So it
Correct.
sounds like insecurities.
Absolutely. And I think
Okay.
it stems from that. I mean, it can stem from a lot of things, which we'll get into. Imposter syndrome can come from a lot of things. It can come from self. It can come from perfectionism. It can come from our childhoods. It's so many layers of imposter syndrome. But either way it goes, we're still doing the work to be something that we tell ourselves we don't deserve.
Oh, okay. Since you already went into it, just keep on going. Like you done dug, you done put the shovel in the ground. I'm like, dig the
Yeah.
hole. Like where's it come from? A lot of times people always go back to what comes back to your childhood. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, a lot of things do, you
Right.
know, come and stem from your childhood. Keep talking about that. I'm really
Yeah, so
interested
if
to
I
hear more.
even let me liken it to an experience. I think the first time I realized that I had imposter syndrome and I didn't know what to call it, I was in college myself. And so in college, I had gotten this great opportunity to work with Emory Neurology Department and do some research on Huntington's disease. And
Wow.
so here I am. I get invited to go to their lab. I'm going there as an intern, doing all of this work. I get invited to a conference to present my research where I was going to be, judged on it and then possibly placed with all of the undergrad programs in the US, right? For this conference. And so I get there, I do my presentation, but I'm seeing Yale and Howard and Spelman and all these schools, and I'm like, child, I don't even know why I'm here. Like, I shouldn't even be, presenting my research. Although I spent months doing all this research, writing a
Hmm.
journal
Hmm.
article, and working with some of the best names in science, I just did not believe that I should be there. Long story short, when they got ready to do the placement, place one, two, and three. And they said our third runner place winner is LaQuinte Brinson. And I sat there like,
Good for her. What she
right.
got?
And then they're like, my professor's like, you, and I get up there in complete and utter shock. And I felt so insecure and so shame. Like, what am I doing here? But I had already done the work. I had already given the presentation and I had already been selected, but some way, somehow, I convinced myself that I should not be amongst winners, that I shouldn't be in the room, and that the work that I've done was not enough.
Whoa. Wow, and people looking at you, including me, would never think that you would have imposter syndrome. Never.
Hmm.
Never. But we all have experienced it
Yeah,
at one point or another, and some of us carry it longer and through
absolutely.
life more than others.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, I'm getting a good understanding. So I have some questions that I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Is imposter syndrome like a defense mechanism? What do you think?
Um, I think it can be dependent on the scenario, right? I think that imposter syndrome can be a defense mechanism when you are too hard on yourself and then
Mhm.
somebody else challenges you in that way. Then you can be defensive about it. But I
Ah.
think most of the time is a belief around who you are, where you come from, that really cultivates imposter syndrome. Some people deem it as imposter experience, right? Because they're saying it's something that you experience, but it's not necessarily something that you have to live with forever, like a syndrome. It's not
Mm,
in the DSM, right? We can't, if you go to your therapist, they're not going to diagnose you with
right.
imposter syndrome. So they say it's an experience as a byproduct of some other things. So for
Wow.
instance, like imposter syndrome stimulated all the way back in 1978. And it was believed that only women experience imposter syndrome. And that came from the idea that women were inferior to men. So
Hmm.
at first, it was just delegated to just women only. But then, as they did more research, they realized that more people experience this. But as you can see, that a lot of times it's where you come from, what people believe about you, and what you believe about yourself that really
Yes.
gets it stirred up.
See, this is her epidemiology degree coming out. The
Oh
history,
yeah.
the origin. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Hmm.
love it. I love history of stuff. Yeah. And hysteria was defined as just a woman's
Hmm.
syndrome and disorder
Yes. Yeah.
in beginning too. So I love hearing that kind of stuff. Listen, pull up a chair, y'all. Y'all are in the classroom
In
right now.
the class.
Now I have some more theories. I always got these toy
Yeah.
theories. They're running around. So, all right, bear with me. I'm throwing out some more. Is is imposter syndrome? Is it masked with arrogance and bragging? What do you think? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, because I think that a lot of times we have to put on. I'll speak from the perspective of a black woman in science.
Mhm.
Um, that's just not a heavily black
Who else?
dominant field for women, right?
Right.
And so sometimes you do have to put on a certain aura about you so you can walk in a room so that you feel like I do belong in this room. Because if you get in there and nobody else looks like you, then you have to get drum yourself up to feel like, okay, I belong here. And it can come across as an arrogance.
Mhm.
Some people,
Mhm.
it's really stemming from an insecurity where we overcompensate for what we already have. And a lot of students will experience this as you go into the workforce, as you start doing interns, you will start to feel the need to overcompensate. And with
Okay.
overcompensation, there will be a change in behavior. And then that's where we get the arrogance and everything else from.
That's it. That's it.
Hmm.
That's it. That was gold nuggets, y'all. We got some gold nuggets dropped. That's it. It's overcompensation. Because I'm feeling like I'm inferior. I shouldn't be here. I'm not good enough. All of those feelings
Yes.
and all those beliefs, because they're really beliefs, is what I hear you saying. They're
Hmm.
beliefs that are causing the feelings. Now, audience, y'all know I'm a CBTer. So as soon as I heard her say, as soon as I heard Coach Q say, like it's the thought, I said, oh, then that produces the feelings, and then the action is the overcompensation. Like you just
Absolutely.
drew the Beck cognitive triangle
Oh
for
yeah.
me, for all the CBTers out there. Yeah,
You're absolutely
that
right.
that makes sense because if I believe I'm not supposed to be here, I'm gonna act like I don't deserve this. I'm not supposed to be here. So, Coach Q, how can this, because this sounds like this can permeate through other parts of your life. Like
Yeah.
how can this thought pattern and belief pattern show up in other areas of one's life?
Oh yeah. So that the feeling of not being good enough. Let's get that down pat. That is going to infiltrate every area of your life, because the way you see you determines the way you show up, and the way you show up determines how everyone else will treat you, and then how everyone else will treat you will point right back to how you feel about you.
That's nuggets dropping again, Q. Sorry.
Right. And so it
Whoa.
will show up. Even think about relationships, and it could be romantic or platonic relationship. You can feel like you're not enough at work, right? And so you can carry that into your relationship because your supervisor didn't praise you or your professor didn't praise you. Then you go home and then you let that bleed into your relationship, and then you start saying, well, you know what, you didn't praise me either. And they're like, where is this coming from? So a
Wow.
lot of times when we have one issue, we allow it to bleed on other issues, and then it just starts to kind of take over our life. And then once we see everything in our lives beginning to mimic each other and look the same, then we start to take what we feel about ourselves and deem it as truth.
Wow. Wow, and if I'm not getting
Mhm.
this, reinforcement or praise or, anything from my outside world, I could absolutely see how it could bleed into romantic relationships, but you broke it down nicely about the job.
Oh, yeah.
I'm always thinking, well, I'm not good enough to be on this project or to take this, extra work, or my boss didn't say I did great, or, on my paper, I didn't receive this. And now I feel like I'm not good enough, and I shouldn't even be in college or in this program. I shouldn't even
Right.
be in this agency. I shouldn't even be in this profession. I'm never gonna make it.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a catastrophe. That's like, taking so one of the games that I love to play at home, we have this giant Jenga, and my daughter's 13, and it's this giant Jenga, and we set it up. We put it in the middle of the living room and we play it until it's weeble and wobbling. It's that last peg that you pull out. It's that last cube or block or whatever the heck those
Mhm.
are. Blocks, I think. It's that last one, and it's weebling and wobbling all the time. But people don't even know that they're pulling stuff out.
Yeah.
They don't even know. But it's such internalized um, battles and
Mhm.
beating yourself up
Yes.
because you don't think you're
Mhm.
good enough when in reality you are.
When you are.
That's okay. 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 All right. So what I'm trying to think is how then, if this is my thinking pattern, this is what I've been thinking. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been
Mhm.
thinking this way. I've been in relationships like this. I can never be good enough for this person. Or even I start flipping it around. You're not good enough for me because then I'm not good enough. It's just a cycle. I'm not good enough to love. I'm unlovable
Mhm.
my CBT years again, it starts turning into that. How does one get out of this cycle of internal abuse? Like,
Yes.
how did it get out of this thought pattern?
Absolutely. I think it first starts off with knowing your imposter voice. Okay. So you have an imposter voice that is telling you all of these things that go against what you know. So you have your voice and you have your imposter
And then
voice.
me, 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 me,
Right.
me.
And so I think it is, for me, I had to distinguish between the two. Okay. I hear that voice in my head saying, you're not enough. You can't do that. You can't accomplish that. But then I know the reality of what I've already done.
Hmm.
And sometimes you have to just focus in and say, hold on a second. That's not true. You got to combat it because, again, what you believe is going to affect how you show up in spaces. And so, if you don't address that imposter voice, then you're going to carry it with you and it's going to start to dominate the spaces that you are occupying. And then you can't change your behavior. So,
So
yeah, go ahead.
let me yes, and I'm gonna let you finish because you're on a roll. But when I think about that, it's like, okay, Coach Q, I can hear people saying, but I see on social media, but I see people leaning up against their Lamborghini,
Mhm.
that's or that they're all in the relationship, all hugged up and taking all these beautiful pictures with filters,
Oh, yeah.
you know. Like, how do I overcome that? How can I just talk to myself when I'm like, I should be doing more. I'm this such and such an age. I should be doing it, and I should. That's that
Mhm.
voice you're talking about. How can they just give themselves affirmation? How can we give ourselves affirmation when there's just so much around us that says, "Nah, you're supposed to be like this and you're
Yeah.
not good enough."
Yeah, so I mean, that social comparison is a crazy thing, especially in the world of social media, right? And so like you're saying, we're seeing people have the success that we want and we're seeing or the relationship or whatever it may be. I always say that there's a part of their story that you don't have access to. So you haven't accessed their story. So you can, sure, if you want to, compare yourself to that, but there's a part of it that I'm sure you're missing out. And so I think we have to be real about our lives and where we come from and the goals that we set for ourselves and measure ourselves against self because there will
Mm.
always be someone that's going to do better than you, right? But it's like when I sat down and said I wanted this for my life, I didn't do it with anybody else in mind. It was what I wanted. So when I measure myself against self to say, 5 years ago, I only thought about this. Now I'm living in it. Then you can actually see your success in where you are and realize that you're not an imposter.
Wow. Write that down. Write that down. Measure yourself against yourself. I got
Interesting.
all off the mic. I know producers was like, get back on the mic. Measure yourself against yourself. It's that comparison that starts to
Mhm.
pull us into this dark abyss. Wow. Wow.
Absolutely.
Measure yourself against yourself. And then it's okay to challenge yourself and set goals and keep rising and rising. But this overcompensating and this perfectionist and all, that burns you out. That wears you down.
And
I love the fact that you said everything you see, is it you don't know the backstory.
Mhm.
Everything that glitters ain't gold. You have no
It's
idea what's
not.
behind the scenes.
And I think a key thing to remember is not allowing exposure to intimidate you, but allow it to inspire you. So when you see someone at this higher level, when you've been exposed to greater, let it be inspiration for you. Don't allow it to intimidate you to say, oh my God, I can't do this. How could I ever? No, it's because there's somebody, I guarantee you, that's looking at you and where you are, and they are either inspired by you or they feel inferior to you.
Wow.
But you know what you've gone through. And if you could talk to them, I'm sure you would tell them, you could do this.
Hmm.
You just don't have the opportunity to talk to the people that you're watching. But if you did, I'm
Wow.
sure they would let you know you got this.
Wow. Wow, that's good stuff, Coach Q. Y'all see why I had to have her on the show, right? Dropping some knowledge. I know that y'all cups are overflowing. Mine is. This is so good. Okay, we're gonna keep on going because we're on a roll. We're on a roll. So what I'm thinking, and what I've heard for so long is people say, "Fake it till you make it." And I want to know because I've heard therapists, I've heard coaches say that. I've heard, you know, older wise people fake it till you make it. What are your thoughts on faking it till you make it? Like so for viewers and listeners who might not know what I mean keep on acting as if you believed what you should be believing because you're already dope, right? So what do you think about faking it till you make it, coach?
Yeah, so I'm not an advocate for fake it till you make it, although I understand the idea behind it. What I would encourage others and what I encourage my clients to do is to show up in your strengths
Mm.
and not to mask your weaknesses. Okay? When you show up in your strengths, right, then you receive opportunities based off of your strength. And then you also have an opportunity to learn where you are weak. But when you mask your weaknesses as if they have arrived, right? You are cutting yourself off from opportunities to become better. But a lot of times we are so focused on our deficiencies that we spend all the time dressing our deficiencies up, not even realizing how much power our strengths hold.
Wow.
So I don't
Wow.
believe in fake it till you make it.
You know what? Me either, coach. I'm glad you said it because you know what it reminds me of is The Wizard of Oz. That's
Mhm.
like one of my favorite childhood movies, and The Wiz too. But what it reminds me of is there's this scene where the Wizard of Oz is behind the curtain and he's like turning wheels and he's doing all this stuff and he's like smoke is coming up and he's spinning, he's like, you have reached the great and powerful Oz, and he does all of this hoopla and all of this magic and smoke. And Dorothy and the Scarecrow and the Lion and the Tin Man, they all think that it's this big, great, and powerful Oz.
Mm,
And they went back, and got the witch and destroyed her, melted her, and brought back the broom. And they're still like, we want our heart and our brain and all this. We want these things that we feel inadequate and inferior because we don't have a heart and a brain and a way to get home and courage. And the Wiz was exposed by little Toto. Toto went and grabbed the curtain like, "Hey, look who's behind the curtain." And the Wiz says, "Oh, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain."
Mhm.
Meanwhile, it's him. I love that scene because to me, that's imposter syndrome. Like he
Yes.
was
I love
acting
that.
like, you know what I mean? When in reality, he was.
Yeah.
He was great. He was knowledgeable. He was full of wisdom. And he didn't need all of the smoke and all the mirrors and
Right.
but he felt inadequate. And so he felt like he needed to overcompensate and be this great and powerful whiz when he really had all the answers for all of them.
Yeah.
And then to me, it's like a story in a story
Mhm.
where you have Dorothy, you could have went home all this time.
Right.
You know, Lion, you were courageous. You went into the castle where you knew was dangerous and a witch and everything. You did that already. And the Scarecrow was the smartest character. He always had some kind of, some kind of scheme. Like he got the tree mad at him and had the tree throw apples because Dorothy wanted some apples. Look, I
Right.
saw this movie way too many times, y'all.
The whole, but I never thought about it, but I really like the comparison.
I was like,
I
I'm
do.
tearing down this movie and analyzing it, you know? And you're like, the Tin Man had a heart because Tin Man cried all the time. He already had a
Mhm.
heart. But the Wiz said, y'all already have these things. And then he realized, wait a minute, I had all this wisdom. I don't need all this smoke. I don't need all this because
Yeah.
I was already great and powerful. And I thought about that when I thought about imposter syndrome, when I thought about having you on, I said, that's what it
It
is,
is.
And then it takes something in your life or it takes someone to say, you're already
Yeah.
all of these things.
Mhm.
You're already all of these things. So I love the fact that you're saying you don't fake it till you make it
Mm-mm.
because you'll never realize how great you are until you allow some of your weaknesses to show up.
Yes.
And then you say, "Oh, I can strengthen these areas. I can grow in this area." And then you're just going to become greater and greater and greater, excuse my slang, but you just going to be all that.
All of that.
I love that. Yeah, I don't agree with that fake it till you make it because then you're just faking. And then you become what you fear, and that's
Yes.
an
That
imposter.
is very true. Very
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Boom. We got it. Okay. Okay. So I feel like you got some more tips. And so let's do some tips. I want y'all take out your pen and your paper. So we already started with positive affirmations.
true.
And it's not just something like I'm going to pick something out of a book, but I'm going to talk the truth
Yes.
to myself. So that's number one. Coach Q said, speak the truth to yourself and hush the inner critic. What else you got, Coach Q? I know you
I
got more.
think first, one another important thing is having a mentor that will tell you the reality of the steps that is required to get to wherever you're trying to be. Because a lot of times we don't have an idea of what it really takes to get to the other side. We have envisioned this. We've seen enough Insta stories that we put together this whole idea of this is what it requires to get to the other side. And so when we're missing those pieces or it's not going the way that we think, then we point it back in the direction of us. Anytime you can just look at things in life when something happens, if we can't find a reason, we'll take it back to us and we take the ownership of it. But what it's doing, it's bringing down our self-confidence and things of that sort. So having a mentor or someone that can really guide you through the steps to remind you and affirm you that, hey, you're on the right track, it's okay if that happened, so that you're not always taking the hit for things that are not going the way that you hope.
Wow. So a mentor
Mm-hmm.
acts as two different things for me.
Mhm,
Taking from what you said a little earlier, it acts as someone that I can look up to
mhm.
and their goals. I can look at this person not to feel inadequate
Right.
too, but I can look at them as that's the potential me. I can have those qualities. But also it's someone that keeps you on track to say, you are all of these great things.
Mhm.
And yeah, you can be greater. How can we obtain that goal? I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, that's number two. I'm numbering them. However more you have, we gonna land on that.
This is one of my favorites, and it's managing your emotional hijacking. And I don't want to be too scientific and talk about the amygdala and the
You
prefrontal
can't help
cortex.
it. No, don't hold back.
So
Give it to us.
but that's a part of the process. A lot of times we're being emotionally hijacked because we may have an experience that is similar or feeling. We experienced something that we felt before, and then we think we know the outcome. Our brains basically say, you've been through that before, but you haven't, right? And before you get a chance to fully access it, you tap into what you feel. And a lot of times we're overtaken by feelings
Feelings.
and we are not really embracing the reality of what is happening. We have to
Mm.
check ourselves. When you feel something, pause. What's going on? Why do I feel this? Because a lot of times you're just equating it to a failure that maybe you've experienced before in your childhood. I mean, it could go all the way back to a spelling test, right? Maybe you got something wrong on a spelling test, and then here you are studying to take your GRE, or you're going to take the bar, whatever it is. And you're like, I knew that word. That same little thing that seems so insignificant can plague you throughout your life. But it's
Oh,
just a feeling that is familiar. It is not the same situation. But we take
wow.
a familiar feeling and make it the exact same situation.
Just duplicate it
Hmm.
over and over and over. A feeling is not reality.
Yes.
Feelings can be challenged. That's what I heard you
Yes. And
say.
that's what emotional hijacking is taking over your feelings and your emotions and not allowing you to fully experience the situation that you are currently in.
Nice. All right, y'all, write it down. Okay, you did? All right. I'm sorry. Yes, don't be emotionally hijacked. Don't allow it. So what I hear in that too, Coach Q, is we have control. We have
Absolutely.
control. Oh, so we're not just out there flapping around like a fish on the side of the pond, you know? So
Right.
we have control over emotions and thoughts
Yes.
and the patterns. Oh, I love that. Don't y'all feel empowered by that?
Oh, yeah.
We have control. Okay. Any more?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, 100% we have control, but we have to do the work before we get in the position of success. So those daily affirmations start long before the opportunity presents itself. If you believe that you're just going to wake up and feel the most confident in the world, but you're not doing the work when you don't have anything going on, it doesn't work like that. The way you treat yourself in private will show itself in public.
Whoa.
What are you saying to yourself when nobody's around?
It's too much. No, it's not too much. We deserve this. What you say to yourself in private will show up in public.
Yes.
That's it. How you treat yourself in
Hmm.
private will show up in public. Child, wow. So you have to practice this thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Practice being good to yourself.
Hmm.
Practice loving yourself. I love how you said, I'm a lover.
Yeah.
Practice loving on yourself,
Hmm.
and then you can show up for others and love them the way they deserve, but you can't do it until you're doing it for
For
yourself.
yourself.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love
Absolutely.
that. Okay. Anything else
Yeah,
that
I
you
think
wanna say?
I think I'll leave you with one more because I think this one is super important for me, and I think as I just everyone as we climb and as we reach different levels in our lives, is to show up in every room like you belong to be in the room. Because when we show up timid, then we start those thoughts will follow like, but every room, unapologetically, you belong there,
Mm,
right? And allow your full self to be in the room. If you show up halfway, then you're going to feel like, I don't know. You're going to start to second guess yourself. But when you really show up in your fullness, the fullness of who you are in every room, in every space, you will start to connect with people on a different level. You will start to meet people that can help you as well as people that you can help. But that requires
mm.
your full self in the space. So yeah, that would be the last thing.
That is nice. I think we went to 5. I stopped counting and messed up the count. But I think that was 5, y'all. That is beautiful. I love that. I love you ending with that one, coach, because showing up in your full self, your first steps helped us to determine who our full self is.
Yeah.
If we don't know who this full self is, we can't do number 5 or 4 or 5 or 6. We can't, because then we're like, "Well, who is that? I don't know
Right.
who that is." But if I have a coach or a mentor, if I am affirming myself and reminding, "These are my accomplishments. This is who I am." And not just career and not just, school, or I have, but it's everything. It's family. It's not just my job, but it's friends who love me. All of those are accomplishments. When you get 1, 2, 3, 4, you can do 5 with confidence. You can be
Absolutely.
like, "Oh, deserve to be here.
Deserve it.
I deserve to be here." So my son, he's 16. Shout out to CJ. CJ is 16 and he goes to this prestigious private school. My husband graduated from that school, and so basically he was like, he got to go there. And I was like, all right, because I'm an educator. So I was like, public school is fantastic. It's a place that I think children can grow and learn and have wonderful teachers. Anyway, private schools do too. And so he's there. And I didn't go to a private school, y'all. I went to public. And so my son would leave, and this is when he was a freshman. He's a junior now. Oh my
Oh
goodness.
my goodness.
He's a junior now. He was getting out the car as a freshman, and I would say, CJ, you belong here. And I would say it to him. And there was no indication that he didn't think he didn't.
Mhm.
But I was like, you belong here. You are smart. You are ambitious. You got into this doggone school,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you are just as good, if not better, than the folks around you. You deserve to be here, and you belong here. And I probably said it for several weeks. And one day he turned around and looked me right in my eyes, coach, right in my eyes, Healing Overflow family, and said, Mom, I know. I said, oh,
Love that.
have a good day. And I didn't need to say it anymore.
Mhm.
He's like,
Mhm.
I know. Because he's showing up as like him. He knows who CJ is. And I was like, I think I did all right. I think I did all
Right.
right. I know. And that really taught me something. I'm learning from my then 14, 15-year-old that, I know. And I have to keep saying it to myself if I don't think I belong there. I know I belong here. He taught me a good lesson that day. So, and you taught us, some invaluable, valuable, whatever words I want to use today, like just gold. That's why I kept saying gold nuggets. You taught us some really good nuggets, simple tips. You broke them down. We know you could have went deep with your science, little nerdy,
No, I know.
cute and nerdy self. You could have went there. We could handle it. We was ready, coach. You was light on us today. But you gave us so much that we could write down and we can take as tips and eat it throughout the week and throughout the month. We can apply it. We can go back to our notes. We can rewatch it. It was so valuable, and I thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming here. I know that the audience, the family needs to know, how do they get in touch with you if they have more questions? How do they become, listen, you coach folks. They might say, I want to coach.
Yeah.
They can get it. And how do they become someone that you coach? I know you got a list,
Yeah,
a waiting
absolutely.
list, can they get in? How can they get in
Absolutely.
touch with you? Give me all the info.
Absolutely. So you can go to my website, academyofvisions.com. And you can email me at coachq@academyofvisions.com if you want to. And on all social media platforms, it's I am Coach Q.
All of this is provided for you below or above, depending on what you're looking at, depending on how you're listening, because we're everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we're everywhere. So it depends on how you're watching. Facebook, it's all provided for you. Click on that thing and get your life
Yeah.
for real, for real. How can they read about you and read things that you publish? Like, you're published.
Yeah, so
What can
like
they read?
JSTOR, I know that the work that I've done with Emory is on JSTOR. So Huntington's disease, you can type in my name, you'll find a published article. Um,
Yes.
of course, like I do have a book, so Pregnant with a Vision, which is, just I took the scientific approach again on the reproductive cycle and purpose. And I kind of likened our purpose to that. How do we develop purpose? And I just use the reproductive cycle to kind of tell the story of what happens in the human
Love it.
body, and to kind of help you understand what happens with your purpose. So the whole nerdiness, it does not, it
You need
doesn't go
glasses.
away. It doesn't go away. I am a true science junkie. And lastly, you can check out my podcast. It's called Coach Therapy. So the Coach Therapy podcast is on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you like to listen to your podcast. You can find me there.
Everywhere. Y'all, how did she casually say, I got a book? I was like, mention your book. I know about your book. Let's go. Oh, yeah, I got a book. Yeah, she's an author. She's a podcaster. Listen to the podcast. There is something about you, coach. When I listen to your podcast, it's so warm.
Mm.
It's so inviting. It's not condescending. You're not talking down like y'all need to get it together. It's like, listen, do this, see this, try that. You know, observe this that's already here. It's beautiful, y'all. I feel like there should be like glittery, like bubbles when you talk. That's the feeling I get. Y'all know
Wow.
I'm a gut feeling social worker. I'm always like, I feel it. That's what I feel when I listen and when I watch. It
Thank
feels like
you.
just warm, like welcome, come on in. Y'all won't be disappointed. All the information is above or below. Click on it and keep healing. Keep healing from what you hear, from what you read, from what you experience.
Absolutely.
Keep healing so that your healing overflows onto everyone around you. This has been a beautiful time with Coach Q. Thank you so much for coming
Thank you
again.
for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy. I'm Dr. Toy. We've become really good friends. That's why I call you family. Thank you for sharing. Y'all share the podcast. Y'all watch. Y'all share. It's going to do each time I put out a new podcast. You can listen to a past or present podcast through Linktree. Click on the link and just catch up. Catch up if you need to, and comment and send, correspondence and send questions. Y'all been doing that, and I so appreciate it. Keep healing. You know your healing will overflow onto everyone else. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.